Hello dear colleagues. Today I would like you to present a lesson that could be used while the learners study the topic news. To be more precise, we decided to adapt this lesson to the topic of the matching newspapers. So considering the fact that reading in the 12th grade is really essential skill or strength, the following learning objectives were defined, and basically they are for reading. So we thought that it would be better to select the following three learning objectives. So the first one is 12R1, where students should understand complex and abstract main points in extended text in a wide range of familiar and unfamiliar general and curricular topics. The second one is R5, where the learners are asked to deduce meaning from context in extended texts on a wide range of familiar and unfamiliar general and curricular topics. The third one is 12R8, where learners are asked to select and evaluate paper and digital reference resources to check meaning and extend understanding. And here maybe you can ask your students to use different type of dictionaries as like paper-based source electronic versions. The next one is basically it's S1, where students are asked to use formal and informal language register in talk on a range of general and curricular topics, including some unfamiliar topics. And the last one is like an additional objective is when the learners are asked to respect different points of view. And this is really important considering the fact that learners should listen to each other and share their opinion. Based on the following learning objectives, the following lesson objectives were identified. So by the end of the lesson, the majority of learners are supposed to be able to elicit the main idea of the article, to analyze and evaluate information, and to respect peers' opinion. So basically, before starting the lesson, the teacher could ask students to identify the various sources they can get information from. From the lower level class, teacher can supply them with the sources of getting information such as the media, the newspapers, the radio, and the internet. Within maybe 5 or 7 minutes, learners are asked to analyze the given sources and find as many pros and cons of using this, in terms of receiving information as they can. Thus, for example, if they take, let's say, a radio, they can come with ideas that the following advantages of the radio can be used is such as radio is available almost everywhere, whereas as a disadvantage they can mention that it's old-fashioned and maybe not a lot of people prefer using this one. For the internet, which is known to be one of the most commonly used source of getting information, they can mention that firstly, the internet could be used maybe as a good source because it's available everywhere and it gives you an access to almost every kind of information. Whereas as the minuses, they can mention that not all information found there is reliable and so on. The main function of the teacher is to listen to and monitor and be sure that the learners follow the rules of the discussion and they respect peers' opinion. But basically, learners are told that during this lesson they are going to discuss the role of newspapers, and moreover they are going to analyze the given newspaper article and to realize whether it was reliable or biased, whether they could trust the information given in it, and so on. Before going to the main activity, learners are asked the following warm-up questions. So thus, they are asking to give the answers for the following questions. So, what is the role of newspapers in society? And here the learners could vary their answer a lot. Some of them will tell that it has a very essential role, whereas others could argue that nowadays just a few people read newspapers. So it's just a matter of opinion. Then the next question would be, do they think that news is censored in some countries? Again, here I guess teachers would have to monitor that because students could be maybe too biased while judging this. So just be careful with the discussion of this one. So is the news censored in your country and why? Again, students can give various answers depending on their own opinion. So do you trust the information you get from the newspapers? This, despite the fact that this is a general question, try to expand it and ask the question, and ask the learners to give more reasons why they trust or do not trust the information in the newspapers and so on. So do they read in newspapers in other languages? If not, what is the reason for that? If yes, how it helps them to develop themselves or their language skills? So who chooses the newspapers that go into who chooses the news that goes into newspapers? Maybe here learners could tell about the various types of newspapers and various professions of people who are involved in producing newspaper, and how do they think they make choices and why. So in terms of publishing the particular article in the newspapers, so what are the main factors that influence the choice? Maybe you can hear, for this question, you could give learners some more time and they could make a list of various reasons like reliability, popularity, and things like that. Again, it's the choice of every teacher. As a next activity, learners are suggested to work in 3 groups, and each group is going to work with a particular task related to an IELTS speaking. In order to differentiate this task, you could, for the first group, you can appoint the easiest task, which is
Unit 22. Listening. Exercise 1.
Some people say, good, it's great if the world's warming up. We'll have better holidays. But if they stop to think for a second, they'd realise it's serious. I mean, if it gets warmer, it stands to reason that more water will evaporate from the oceans, and surely that means more storms somewhere else. There's evidence that there are more storms, hurricanes and so on, and that they're more intense. Now that more accurate records are kept, we can see that global warming is a fact. Another aspect of global warming is how this will affect the sea level. It'll definitely rise. I read something recently which suggested that the sea might rise by as much as half a metre over this century. Because as the ice melts, the oceans expand. Imagine what effect that'll have on low-lying areas around the world. Another thing that gets me is that we know all this, and yet we're not reducing our greenhouse gas emissions anything like fast enough to stop the effects of climate change. We might be able to slow it down a bit, but I think that's all.
I know it seems as if there are more cases of extreme weather like floods and droughts, but I wonder if it's only that we hear about them more than before because of the news on TV and the fact that now it's easier to communicate world events to everyone and very quickly. Surely there's always been severe weather. Storms are a natural phenomenon after all. OK, I admit there is evidence of global warming, but is there evidence to show that that's what's causing severe weather? Wouldn't we have had these hurricanes and so on anyway? I mean, nobody even really knows how storms form and the path they'll take. You see, what it is that the consequences are much greater these days. The world is more densely populated, so in terms of the effect on population and financial loss, the results are more devastating. But perhaps we should study the data more rather than the hype. Everybody's heard of El Niño and La Niña, and I must admit that must be showing something. But from what I hear, the jury's still out on whether it's global warming that's exacerbating events.
which is to create some questions for the IELTS speaking part 1, and it is known that here the questions are the easiest, but considering the fact that we are mainly going to speak about the newspapers, so all the questions should be related to newspapers and maybe as addition to media sources. So the first group, maybe it's going to be the low-level learners, they could be asked to complete 3 questions. The second group is asked to design a card for an IELTS speaking part, and they could be asked to create 1 card, or if it depends on the number of students in the class, maybe 2. And the third group is going to have the most challenging task, so they are suggested to design questions for IELTS speaking part 3, and they are asked to design 3 questions. In order to make this activity more smooth, you can ask to group 3 and group 2 communicate and work together, because the questions should be somehow connected, but it's not necessary. So for this activity, you could devote about 10 minutes. As soon as learners finish their task, completion, you could ask them to remember what are the four main criteria for assessing IELTS speaking that are assessed in IELTS speaking exam. Then come up with the following ideas. So that's their pronunciation. It should be clear, and all sounds should be easy to be understood by the examiner. Then there is a grammar range, and learners would specify here that they should use complex sentences. Then there is a lexical range, or maybe topic-related vocabulary. In this term, considering the fact that we are going to speak about news, learners should or could use some of the vocabulary related to news. And last but not the least, it's coherence and cohesion. So these are the linking words and logical structure of the following questions. So then each group is, like for example, group 1 is going to choose any person in the class or 3 people in the class, and they're going to ask their questions. Group 2 is going to choose one person and ask him to answer their question on correctly, and ideally group 3 is going to ask the rest of the students, and like this all the students would be able to answer some of the questions and ask questions in response. By the end of this activity, learners are asked to assess answers of each other. If it's necessary, teachers can provide the learners with a IELTS descriptor band score, and like this, learners will evaluate the answers of each other. The next activity is going to be connected directly with the source, or in this case, it's newspaper. So again, learners are divided into three groups. It is my suggestion that you would maybe swap the groups, so it will not mean that the learners will work in the same group the whole lesson. So each group will be given an article on a scientific topic. Maybe it could be connected with the DNA, considering the fact that it's the main topic of the term. So, and before, learners are suggested to skim the text and identify the main idea. Maybe they could write it somewhere, and just not to forget that. Beforehand, the teacher displays the following headlines for the article, for the newspaper articles, and the task of the learners is to match their particular article with the headline. They could be easily confused because all of them are somehow connected with the DNA, and somehow even the topics are very close to each other. That is why here skimming is very important strategy for working with text. So as soon as the learners identify and found their headline, so they take their seats and they justify their choice, why they think that this headline suits their topic. So then, as soon as maybe some of the learners will find it difficult, and in order to do that, you can ask them the following questions. So, was this task difficult or not? So, if it was difficult, of course, why? If not, what helped them to identify their headline directly? So, why is it sometimes difficult to understand the idea of the article from the headline? And here the learners will discuss it a little bit and come up with the idea that the authors or the editors, when they publish some newspapers, they want some newspaper articles, they want to attract people's attention. That is why sometimes they do not use full sentences, or they use something catchy. So the next activity is connected with when the learners continue working with their articles. And so in order to expand this activity and to increase learners' vocabulary on a scientific topic, you could conduct the following vocabulary activity. So, considering the fact that they are working in groups, each learner in the group can be appointed with a particular letter of the alphabet. Maybe it could be consonant or vowels, and the task would be to find 5 unknown words in the articles starting with a particular letter for each learner. And so then, working with a dictionary, either a printed version or an electronic version, the learners could be asked to find the definition of this word, the synonym of the word, and of course make a complex sentence containing this word. Like this, you would expand the learner's vocabulary, and plus it's a good practice for them to work with the media sources and with the dictionary. So the next activity is the most challenging, because working with their article, Now they know the main idea of the article, they know some subject-specific vocabulary. Learners will be asked to create a mind map concerning the article. So they could write down the main idea in a few words in the center of the paper, and then just connect the supporting ideas. So, but the main task would be to use as many details as possible, because they're going to swap their mind maps with other groups, and the task would be to identify the original meaning of the articles. I guess that this activity helps learners to analyze and to identify the key information and the supporting information, and of course it develops their critical thinking and analytical thinking skills. As soon as learners would finish this activity, they could be asked to give like a short summary for the article of the of another team according to the mind map, and the others would tell whether their guesses were right or wrong. When we conducted this activity in my class, some of the groups might find it really difficult to identify the meaning of the article because of the construction of the mind map. It was not precise enough. As a plenary activity, you can use some of the questions. So whether learners think that generally the newspapers are reliable sources of getting information or not, and maybe learners can share some of the experience, whether they maybe some of them have written the articles themselves or not. So this one was an abstract from my lesson, and the following these links, you can find the newspaper articles that we used during the lesson, because I've chosen exactly these sites because they are considered to be reliable, and plus they contain a very good academic related language. So thank you for your attention.